So, Hollow City! Welcome to our informal, spoiler-filled review of this wonderful, wonderful book. We also did an informal review of the first one, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, but we decided we wanted to do a formal review of this one because it was just so much fun. What happened in this book? Basically, after the bomb hit their orphanage, and the time loop was destroyed, Miss Peregrine was kidnapped in the last book, and they get her back, but she's unable to transform back into her bird, or human form, from her bird form, so she's stuck as a peregrine. And off the kids go, they leave mainland, and they're searching for another time loop that has another bird. They encounter a whole bunch of things. They manage to find a time loop, but the bird is gone. This time loop contains peculiar animals, such as an emu raft, which we will get to. Off they go to the middle of London looking for peculiar pigeons, which they eventually find. London is very kind of creepy and eerie. They find other time loops that have been destroyed. They find some new children with some pretty creepy powers. What else? Then off they go. They find the
headquarters for the Council of Bird Ladies.
And they meet some other people with more powers, but then they finally manage to achieve their goal of getting Miss Peregrine back into her human form. And then you realize that all along they haven't had Miss Peregrine. When they lost Miss Peregrine, she got switched, and they now have her evil white brother. Which was like, there was almost no way to call this. There were like little tiny hints that something was really wrong with Miss Peregrine.
But they covered that up really well, because one of the things they said was when you're stuck in the form of a bird, you start to go more bird than person. And so whenever Miss Peregrine did something that was not in her character, you're like, oh, it's because she's becoming a falcon.
And it makes perfect sense. It really does. And then so you get this evil guy who's like, well, now I caught you. And you're like, fuck, man. Holy crap. And then so obviously the kids get caught, and they're off, they're being like taken by subway to wherever they're holding people. And basically Jacob and Emma escape, and it turns out that Jacob can actually talk to the Hollows, and he speaks their language, so he can control them as well.
Think of it as like some parcel tongue stuff going on here.
So it was very shocking, very, very interesting.
They kind of allude to the ability to talk to Hollows, because Jacob has this dream about his grandfather, and his grandfather talks to one, and it's like, you will learn, and you're just like, well, fever dream,
yeah,
cool. And then you find out it's like legit.
True. And you kind of suspected, but you know. But the big shocker was the not actually Miss Peregrine thing.
Yeah, that was a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah. But anyways, one of the things we can talk about, emu rafts.
Okay, so there's a picture of an emu raft, and I'm gonna say that it was one of the most horrifying moments of my life.
Because they kept talking about emu rafts like it's a fictional thing, and you're like, whatever. They're
What's
never
an emu raft? Ha ha ha, emu raft. You
get to that part, and you're just like, oh, I'm gonna turn the page now because I'm very uncomfortable. It was just like,
Other things, Enoch is a serial, like, he is a future serial killer. My notes were just, for this book, were like, oh, I like this, this, and this. I'm liking this book more than the second book. No. Enoch is a future serial killer. No. Enoch really makes me uncomfortable. No. He's going to kill everyone. And I pulled a quote, actually, where it's like, oh, he's telling them, like, oh, I like the sad stories, especially the ones where the princesses get eaten by the dragons and everyone dies. And I was just like, I do not trust you, boy.
I'm on to you.
When the whites come, you were totally gonna jump sides. You're gonna do it. You're gonna do it.
Oh, it's gonna be, yeah, he creeps me out too. He really does. Even the picture of him kind of creeps me out. But, yeah, Hugh, I really liked what Hugh,
it was a little bittersweet, because the one thing Hugh says is he has this crazy scene where he's like fighting off all of these whites, with his bees.
Because he finds like a field of bees and the kids are inside and they've been kidnapped by whites, but the whites don't know Hugh's out there, and so the bees just start like...
And people are just like, after, when they're in another situation, they're like, Hugh, use the bees, Hugh. And he's like, you realize that like once they sting, they die. And you're just like... And he's like, they were my friends. And I'm just like, oh my god, Hugh, I'm so sorry, baby. That sucks. And he's like, all I have is this one left. And I'm like, ah. And they're just like, we'll find you more. Okay. The children, as we mentioned in our previous review of the first book, where they're just like, they have like this special day where they just go and they terrorize the village. It's okay because we don't kill anyone. They, like, there is something about them that's just off, and I don't trust it.
They're just a little creepy all the time.
Other thing, are you creeped out by Emma and Jacob's relationship because she was with his grandfather? I know it's, I don't know, it just, it's a little bit off-putting.
And the only way that they can be together is if he stays in the past. And, yeah. I found it really interesting because, I don't know, I found the time loop thing really weird because if they went out of the time loop, wouldn't they run into his grandfather leaving?
You would think so. And at what point, like, they leave the time loop into their own time, and then they go into another time loop, and they go into a different time. At what point do they start aging? Like, when, because they say when, like, they leave a time loop.
It would only be if they're in the present.
Okay, it's an interesting premise, but it's a little bit confusing. You have to keep track of where everybody is.
Yeah. Yeah, I did find that as well. It was kind of like, you're like, this sounds kind of plausible, but I think there's a few holes in there somewhere that...
And there's this other scene where they're in, like, the main building, and Jacob's, like, running around, and he finds a white that's frozen, and he doesn't kill it. And I'm like, you fool! You fool!
Yeah. They had some characters with some really interesting powers. There were two boys who were like brothers, if not twins, and they could hear each other in their minds, but they also couldn't let go of each other's hands, and if you made them like separate, they'd like scream really, really loud, like glass-shatteringly loud, and they were kind of really creepy but very interesting.
There was the girl who's on the front cover of the book, who can grow holes inside of her. At one point she's thrown up during a bomb and she gets impaled and they're like, oh, and then she's like, no, I'm good. And that was another bittersweet scene because she calls all the kids out on their bullshit.
Yeah, she was like, you guys aren't nice people, like, guys kind of suck. Which was very interesting.
Yeah, I like that part because that's definitely one thing that my problem with these kids is they're just so, like, they may be having that, oh, you know, we have to think about what we do and how it affects things, but at the same time they are so selfish and they don't think about other people. How, like, oh, our way of life is the way of life. You live in a time loop. They never really stop and think about, well, you know, if she comes and joins us in the time loop, she'll never see her sister again.
Yeah. They're just kind of like, hey.
It's like the whole Neverland thing. Go be a lost boy.
Yeah. Like, when I say they consider consequences, it's like Emma and Jacob. Like, she's like to Jacob, like, seriously, go back home. Like, there's really no future between us, and, like, the peculiar world is kind of dying out, so just go home and live your life and go see your parents and your family. That kind of consequence.
I really like Emma in that fact that she does have a head on her shoulders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, while their relationship is a little strange, they're good for each other as well.
And yeah, I like how she's able to say that, and it doesn't feel like I'm doing this to make tension so for our relationship. It's like, no, you should go. This is like...
This legitimately makes sense. Like, yeah. And this is gonna suck, but just do it. Yeah.
It is a good book with good, strong characters. It's when you find like a huge cast of characters like this, it's very hard to have them be different people or have just one distinct thing that defines them. Like how you find in a lot of fantasy books, you have the wise old man, the hero, the love interest, like how that one characteristic defines them. These are a lot of rounded people. And a serial killer. I'm not getting over that.
No. Honestly. And Jacob actually does decide that he wants to go home at some point, but then shit happens and he can't. The fact that Miss Peregrine isn't Miss Peregrine.
The characters' reactions are very realistic.
And so shit has really hit the fan and is really going downhill for them, which is probably why I'm so excited for the next one, because it kind of resolves all that and I finally get a really good ending where...
And this book does suffer a little bit from like the middle book-itis thing, where the middle book exists just to set up for the last book. But it is a lot of fun and it is entertaining and it is really like, you want to read it. You want to finish it. You want to see how it ends.
Yeah. So, I don't have anything else to say.
No, I think that covers about everything. So if you haven't read Hollow City, go pick it up. It is definitely worth the read.
And it was just as good, if not better, than Miss Peregrine's. So, yeah, we'll see you guys next week.